Hello, everyone. My name is Helena Machado, and I'm based at the University of Coimbra in Portugal. And I will speak on behalf of a group of people. I'm the PI of this project called Exchange, which is about the transnational exchange of DNA data in the European Union for the purpose of fighting crime, terrorism, and the so-called illegal migration. And today I will talk about performativity of data in criminal DNA databases and the construction of categories of suspicion. And I will begin with a story of a criminal case that is being told to be a successful story. So, on May 21st, 2015, an elderly couple were found dead and raped in their home in the city of Vienna in Austria. Although the Austrian police found the alleged killer's DNA, no DNA matches were identified in the National Austrian DNA database. However, under a transnational agreement on DNA data exchange among European Union countries, the Dutch DNA database offered a DNA match for a 20-year-old Polish man. The Austrian authorities began looking for him, and the suspect was arrested in Düsseldorf, Germany, on June 2016. There was a suspicion that this man might have committed violent crimes in other European countries, and therefore the authorities of other EU countries, namely the UK, Sweden, and Germany, started looking for matches in the Polish DNA database to DNA stains from solved crimes that were stored in their respective national criminal DNA databases. The matches in this criminal case were produced in the context of the so-called Prüm system. Prüm is the name of a very small German town, where in 2005 the ministries of 5 countries in Europe signed a treaty for cooperation for fighting criminality. So this is a transnational system of surveillance and identification designed to govern some of the most contentious and high-profile issues in current European politics: cross-border crime, terrorism, and illegal migration. And so this pan-European network was created to exchange data pertaining to DNA profiles, fingerprints, and motor vehicle information stored in different criminal databases of different countries. And for the purpose of this paper, I will only focus on the narratives of people who are in charge of operating the system. We have been conducting interviews so far in 18 countries, different 18 countries. And I will explore the performativity of data flows in criminal DNA databases and how these people construct categories of suspicion. So I will explore the meanings that they attribute to the exchange of data. And the criminal case that I just told you provides several interesting clues for understanding this performativity of data. First, the hero of the story is the DNA match. Second, the villain of the story is a man coming from an Eastern European country, a former communist country. A person who is moving around Europe and potentially committing crimes in different countries. And third, the story ends with the promise that crimes committed by transnational criminals might be worked out by transnational cooperation. Building on insights from the literature on surveillance and social studies of science and technology, I make the use of the notion of performativity, and such approach is meant to argue that governance of criminality through the circulation of DNA profiles between different countries performs materiality, meaning, and morality. And in the specific case of the PRUM system, addressing data as performative means to take into account that forms of subjectivation, in this case criminalization, do not only depend on the actual information provided by the data, but on the larger social and political settings. In other words, the exchange of DNA data is entangled with the production of particular sets of suspects. Europe is gradually transforming into a digital and selective border machine. And the narratives of the forensic experts who operate the PRIM system highlight an ambivalence between, on the one hand, the celebration of a European society that facilitates movement and promotes the idea of no borders, and, on the other hand, the increasing attempts to restrict and monitor the mobility of the people deemed problematic. So, as one of the experts was saying, we are just getting globalized. In terms of fighting crime, the freer the movement of people, the harder things can get. So, the starting point of the worries, of the anxieties, is mobility. And in this sense, the PRIM system is seen as a possibility to control these potential dangerous citizens on the move. As one of them said, PRIM gives us the opportunity to catch that guy who can travel freely in all Europe. Of course, this discourse is based on neutrality. DNA profiles are just a string of numbers, as these forensic experts presented. And the PRIM system is based on two steps. The first step consists on automatic exchange of DNA profiles 24 hours a day. And the second step on the circulation of further personal information through mutual assistance procedures. This means that when a DNA match occurs, country A will request country B to send more data regarding that DNA match. And according to our interviews, the first step of exchanging data is characterized by neutrality due to the use of impersonal numbers. So in the first step, as one of them said, you only compare DNA profiles. And DNA profiles are only 20 or 30 numbers. There is nothing you can tell about the owner of the DNA profile from the DNA profile itself. So, how do I go back? Well, anyway. When, in the first moment, DNA profiles are automatically exchanged between countries, we can see an operation that resonates with some authors, namely Agarty and Erickson, described as the surveillance assemblage, which operates by abstracting human bodies from their territorial settings and separating them into discrete flows. And in this sense, criminality is desterritorialized. However, hidden in the seemingly neutrality of codes and numbers and standards, DNA also plays a constitutive role of forms of criminalization, and I will show how that operates. The second step of PRIM, so the exchange of data related to the DNA matches, becomes personalized and territorialized, inasmuch as the type of crime and the name of other personal data are disclosed. And this implies making decisions. So, what sort of matches are we going to follow? Because we don't have the resources or the time to follow every matches. And what supports that kind of decision? In other words, what are the matches that are worthy following? Choosing which DNA matches should be followed up and which ones are not operate along specific notions of suspect populations. And I will show some quotes that illustrate how these decisions are made. Upon the request of country A to obtain more information about the DNA hit, country B, who receives the request, will decide to give or not to give more information. And in the interviews, different positions emerge in these regards. And the main difference is in countries in which the criminal DNA database is on the hands of the police, we decide to send all the information for investigation purposes, everything which is important to pursue a criminal investigation. There are no obstacles to share. While in countries where the criminal DNA database is on the hands of the judiciary, there is the selection, according to these narratives, of which data can be shared, and it is according to the law. So we have also this quote, when the DNA database is a police DNA database, they would like to have all the information like this immediately. And we have to say, I'm sorry, I cannot give this information. So how does it work in practice? What data travels within PRIM? We have this sort of decision, local decision of what is data in which the owner is a national state and which is data that we can provide to externals. For instance, in this quote, the person being interviewed referred that we have race and there is no special limit for the kind of data that we hold in criminal DNA databases. But when we have to share with other countries, we have a strict list of data that we can provide them. And in most cases, it will be the name, date of birth, and gender. But on a local level, they will have all the information possible. So who are the suspects? One of the most prominent one is a foreigner from Eastern Europe countries, from former communist countries. And we have in most of the quotes, in most of the interviews, sentences like this one. Criminals from East European countries, networks implemented in those countries. There are other versions of Europe risky others, and one of them is asylum seekers coming from African countries. As this person says, very often the asylum seekers will be criminals. They will be fingerprinted, we will collect a DNA sample, and so on. For instance, when a man declares he is from Morocco, claiming Morocco forced me because of my political ideas. However, he is a criminal. Also ethnic communities, and in some quotes they will say with more precision, Roma people. And also the drug criminals, and who are typically framed as people coming from African countries that will move very fast in more Central European countries. So, in conclusion, PRUM, this network of exchanging DNA data, should be located in a wider account of changing dynamics of technology, geopolitics, and criminalization. In particular, it highlights contemporary projects to know and govern mobile bodies. Criminalization takes place through the production and use of data, in particular by managing several decisions related to data exchange. And this paper used the example of Europe to highlight how national and supranational levels, notions of cross-border crime and suspect individuals and social groups, and of national ownership of data and other forms of political subjectivity are expressed through socio-technical systems of government. Thank you.